بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد إخوة الإسلام عباد الله. In light of that which is occurring in Afghanistan today and that which is being spread on in the U.S. media, I wanted to remind the brothers and sisters with the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala when He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is addressing the Muslims in this verse. In ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. If an immoral person, one who is openly sinful, he comes to you with some news of an event or a thing, fatabayyanu. And we will see in a second what is intended by that. And tusibu qawman bi jahalatin fatusbihu ala ma fa'altum nadimin. Lest you bring harm to a people and thereafter you are remorseful or you are regretful for that which you have done. For that which you have done. Now, Al-Imam Al-Shawkani, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, in his tafsir, he says, فَتَبَيَّنُوا يعني فتبينوا يعني فتثبتوا من التثبت. فتثبتوا يعني verify. It's from تثبت. والمراد من التبين التعرف. And what is intended by التبين is التعرف. And what is intended by this word is to acquaint oneself or familiarize oneself with something. And he also states another word, التفحص, which is to search or inquire about a thing, seek information about something. So he's saying that this is what is intended by فَتَبَيَّنُوا, yani become familiar with that thing, seek information about that thing. وَمِنَ التَّثَبُّتِ الْأَنَاء وَعَدَمُ الْعَجَلَةِ وَالتَّبَصُّرِ فِي الْأَمْرِ الْوَاقِعِ وَالْخَبْرِ الْوَارِدِ. And he states, and from التَّثَبُّت, from verification, is having balanced justice or balanced judgment and the lack of being hasty. Being balanced in one's judgment and not being hasty. And to ponder over current events and reported statements and or news, to ponder over these things. Yani, reflect off of them as it relates to its truthfulness, or if it's true, then how can this be? If this is true, then how can this be, or how can that be, and thus forth and so on. And he continues until it becomes explicitly clear and apparent. Until the true reality of that thing becomes explicitly clear and apparent. Now, Ikhwatul Islam, ibadallah, the reason why I'm bringing this particular verse and trying to derive some of the benefit from this verse is that as it relates to Afghanistan today, we have Western media saying all types of things. And unfortunately, some Muslims are affected by what Western media is saying. As I just had a conversation with a brother yesterday that indicates that. Right? And so, one of the things that we have to understand is that the statement about the mainstream media, U.S. media being fake news, that statement cannot be considered to be false in its entirety. On the contrary, there's a lot of truth to that. Because nowadays, regardless of what news agency you're listening to, most of them have, if not all of them, have an allegiance to some type of political platform. They're either left-wing news media outlets or right-wing news media outlets. In the case of Fox News, that's an example of a right-wing news media outlet. MSNBC, CNN, And like this, these are examples of left-wing media outlets. And so they make statements that are in accordance with the agenda of their political views. And so you don't find them actually reporting the news, but on the contrary, you find them basically presenting their opinions in order to foster a certain sentiment that drives the people's opinion as it relates to a situation that's taking place. For this reason, when you go on to the news outlets, you find them consistently saying that if the Taliban take over, this could happen, that will happen, this may happen, this might happen, and thus forth and so on, making them into the boogeyman, so to speak. And all of this is in order to shape the people's opinion about what should be done. Because in reality, a lot of people behind closed doors are not pleased with America pulling out of Afghanistan. They're displeased with Biden doing this. Why? Because if it's not clear to anyone today that wars make certain people here in the U.S. Extremely rich, then I don't know what to say except from crawl from under the rock that you're hiding under. Because these wars are profitable for certain people. People become richer off these wars. And it has nothing to do with the suffering of women and whatever else that they're trying to put in front of the people to gain sympathy and to shape the opinion that, look, we should still be there. We've been there for 20 years, but we still need to be there indefinitely, and thus forth and so on. Because if it was really about women and women's safety, as some of them are trying to put at the forefront, then when we look at the U.S. and when we look at Haiti, for instance, we don't see that they're concerned about the women in Haiti, and that is a country right in the Western Hemisphere. And we see and know what the Haitians are suffering from. If they're really concerned about women, then let's take a look at Cuba and the sanctions that they've had on Cuba for decades that adversely impact regular people, not the government, but regular citizens of the country. If they're so concerned about the women, let's take a look at the U.S. territory, Puerto Rico, that has been devastated by a hurricane, and they're still feeling the effects. And that's a U.S. territory. They have the ability to go in and change something over in Puerto Rico, but they're not. And let's bring an example that's closer to home. Let's take a look at Flint, Michigan. They still have a water problem in Flint, Michigan to this day. That's something that's a place that's right in the U.S. that they have the ability to change. A circumstance or situation that the government has the ability to change. But they're not bending over backwards for the women in Flint, Michigan. So let's not be naive and be suckers into thinking that they really care about the women in Afghanistan, when these countries that I just mentioned are people that share their same religion and same values as it relates to democracy and thus forth and so on. And they don't really even care about them. So the point that I'm making is, don't let the Western media be where you take your information from that causes you to shape your opinion about what's going on over there. Because my question would be, since when does Jake Tapper, for instance, meet the criterion of somebody that's thicker? How does Chris Cuomo fit that criteria? How does Rachel Maddow or Joanne Reed or any of those other people, Tucker Carlson, when can their statements be trusted? In reality, they present opinions to the people with some fact, with small amounts of fact that gives you a general understanding of what may be taking place, but is piled on with an opinion that is meant to shape your outlook of what's taking place in order to serve whatever political agenda the left wing or the right wing is trying to serve up at that time. And what is clear, what they're trying to do is continue occupying Afghanistan. That's what they're trying to do. And that's explicitly clear. So again, the news media, the U.S. news, the mainstream news outlets, MSNBC, NBC, CNN, Fox News, and other than them, you should not allow your opinion of what's going on in Afghanistan to be shaped based off what these news outlets are saying. That's the first thing. And so we're saying that brings me to my second point. My second point being that if you want to know what the Taliban are about, in reality, I would advise the Muslims to wait until those with authority concerning the matter speak on the matter. As Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He states, وَإِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِّنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوِ الْخَوْفِ أَذَاعُوا بِهِ. And when there comes to them an affair that's connected to the safety and stability of the community or fear within the community, then they spread it. They circulate it to the people. وَلَوْ رَدُّوهُ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ وَإِلَى أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنْبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. Have they referred it back to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and back to those in authority, then those that have the ability to derive the correct and proper ruling concerning a thing would have known the issue. They would have known the issue. وَلَوْلَا فَضْلُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَرَحْمَتُهُ لَاتَّبَعْتُمُ الشَّيْطَانَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And if it wasn't for the virtue or the bounties of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala bestowed upon you and His mercy, then you all would have followed the shaitan, except a small amount from amongst you all, except a small minority. So when it comes to these affairs, the affairs of Afghanistan, specifically the Taliban, and who they are and what they're about, and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, first and foremost, we have to be patient in reality to see what they're going to do, not assume what they're going to do. That's first. But then second, let the people of authority, whom Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is referring to in His noble book, be the ones to deal with this. When people talk about it, this particular issue, the issue of Taliban, make sure that it was referred back to the people of authority that is being referred to in this verse, meaning the ulama. Because the ulama will make sure that when news is coming to them based as it relates to what's going on the ground over there, they're going to apply the principles in determining, that's found in Islam, in determining if what's occurring is factual or not. They're going to give their ear to the thiqat. They're not going to give their ear to fusaq. They're going to give their ear to the thiqat, people who have adl, yani Muslim, aqil, balik, salim min al-fisq, wa salim min khawarim al-muru'ah. That's who they're going to give their ears to. They're not going to give their ears to fusaq, people that have political agendas, that are spreading things to the public in order to foster a certain type of sentiment. They're not going to do that. They're going to give you that which is factual and the ruling concerning that which is occurring because they fear Allah and they fear their standing with Allah. And so they're going to base their they're going to base their rulings on that, and not on somebody's political agenda or somebody's quest or thirst for worldly gain, yani greed, and thus forth and so on. So this is something that I want to remind the believers to be mindful of, because there's a lot of things being said about Afghanistan, generally speaking, and the Taliban specifically. So speak, and if we're going to speak about this issue, then let us speak based off that which was referred back to those in authority over us, that have the ability to derive the correct hukum as it relates to what's taking place. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.